We're coming to you today from Melbourne, Australia, and we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording, the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening to the recording today.
Before we get into today's show, a quick word about the Olfactive Melbourne Perfumery.
Brands featured on this show are available as a 4ml sample in our experience pack. Pick 3 fragrances and we'll send them to you with a QR code that links straight back to here.
So you can sniff along with the episode. It's the first interactive perfume podcast experience.
And the best way to discover Australian fragrance from anywhere in Australia. Fall in love with something? Your pack includes an exclusive discount on the full bottle.
Visit olfactiveperfumery.com and build your pack today.
Now, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Olfactive Melbourne podcast. I'm your co-host, Trent Stokes.
And hi, I'm Robin Stokes. Today we have in the studio with us Prashant Khanna, or PK, and he is the founder and perfumer at Vararoha Perfumery. Welcome to the show, PK.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So just to start off, let's have a quick chat about Vararoha. We'd love to know a little bit more about the name. Where are you based and how long have you been around for?
Yeah, we're just babies at the moment. We launched in December of 25, so very new. We're based in the Macedon Ranges. I don't know for those that don't know, that's northwest of Melbourne. It's beautiful country. It's up. It's cold, but it's a really nice place in Victoria to be. The Vararoha as a brand, I guess, started almost 2 years before that conceptually. It was really from a process that initially started more like a hobby, if you will. It was a bit of experimentation. I wanted to make some of the perfumes that I've loved, and I realized that really I'm not one of those that can replicate stuff. And there was quite a lot of discovery through that process for me. Something that I was wanting to do just for myself became something that I started to share with other people. And the more I shared with other people, it started to kind of grow and evolve. It was a tough thing to do because I had, a pretty intense day job. I would work late nights on this. And you realize it's kind of a passion once you're giving up sleep and a lot of it to do this kind of thing. So, it evolved from there. It took the leap about 6 months before we launched. All the formulations were there. Was really kind of reticent initially to say, why don't I just carry on doing this? Why take on something as serious as launching a brand? And then I think it was about 6 months before that I bit the bullet and I went, I need to get this out. It's kind of like, it was almost like a compulsion, if you will. Like I need to kind of start sharing this.
Yep.
And so here we are. We're certainly out there in the world, and hopefully people are starting to discover it a bit more.
They certainly are, which is how we've heard about you. You've obviously got ranging around the place, including Law Perfumery. Law Perfumery is a local perfumery near us, and this is how we discovered your brand with the girls down there. And so we've sampled some of the fragrances, not all of them, because they weren't all in stock at the time, because you're also quite popular, which means that your fragrances move fairly quickly. So we're looking forward to experiencing the broader range today. But PK, as you know, the show is wrapped around a masterclass, and the masterclass is based on a fragrance that best represents your brand. And while we will explore the broader range, we're going to focus on one in particular. So can you let us know which fragrance you selected and why you decided to showcase that particular fragrance today?
I guess it's the one that people are most curious about. I seem to get, in fact, quite opposing views on it as well. Kind of the point of Vararoha, to really test you. It's Seas of Inciver, and I guess the reason I'm doing Seas is, I'm going to be very, very honest with you guys. It's not one that's my favorite, right?
Yeah.
And that is nothing to do with the scent. It's certainly beautiful on the right skin, but all of Vararoha fragrances are very skin oriented. If so, all perfumes are skin oriented, but they really do change for different people. And Seas of Inciver doesn't sit as well on my skin as it sits on other people. So it's not one that I wear often. I wear it sometimes, but I've got the most commentary, I guess, on Seas of Inciver. It seems to be one that people just absolutely love, or I get deadly polite but deadly silence, which is absolutely fine, right? That's exactly the point of perfume. It's not for everyone, the different ones. So, but it is the one that people seem the most passionate about. So I thought I'd share, and in all of them, there's deep narrative, and I've often found I've had to explain, and people go, "Oh, is that what it's about? Is that how it, how did it come? Oh, that's interesting." So I'm like, there's a lot of story behind each of them, and C certainly has a really interesting story behind it. So I guess it's a chance to share all of that with you guys.
Well, kudos to you, because the temptation could always be, hey, I'm going to talk about my favorite fragrance, or I'm going to talk about the fragrance that sells most, but to choose a fragrance that maybe is one of the most divisive of the range, fantastic. It makes it a really interesting show, and I think that's what people are going to want to listen to today. So now we're going to spend plenty of time diving into the Seas of Inciver. You saw what I did there. But before we do, we're going to spray it out. So let's get our noses on it. So what Robin's going to do is she's going to spray it onto blotters, and she's also going to spray it onto the skin. Now, there's a really good reason why we do this. Obviously, when we spray it onto blotters, it means that we're going to get a really consistent smell. All three of us are going to be smelling the same thing. But to your point earlier, PK, this is going to sit very differently on each one of our skins. And there's a few reasons for this. So our fragrance can be affected by skin temperature. It can be affected by our skin chemistry or skin microbiome. It can be affected by a range of lots of different factors, if I'm stumbling over my words here, including the temperature outside, the temperature inside of the room. There's so many different factors and a combination of that can affect the fragrance. Now, what we're about to experience are our opening notes. And before we lean on you to take us through those opening notes, PK, I'm just going to explain to our viewers and to our listeners what opening notes actually are, just in case you're not aware. So on your screen right now, you will see a perfume pyramid. Right up the top of that pyramid are our opening notes. And there's a good reason why it's the smallest component of that pyramid and why it sits at the top. And that's because opening notes consist of the lightest and the most volatile of the fragrance molecules. It means that they surface to the fragrance first, but they also dissipate the fastest. So typically with opening notes, depending on the formulation, you'll experience them from anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes all the way through to roughly about half an hour. But again, it depends on the formula. It depends on how it reacts with your skin. But effectively, opening notes are designed to provide an introduction to the heart notes and the base notes that are yet to follow. This episode of Olfactive Melbourne is proudly brought to you by T&T Group. For Australian fragrance founders, the standard 10,000-piece packaging minimum has long been a wall between the design you envisioned and the design you could actually launch with. T&T Group designs and manufactures luxury packaging for the world's leading fragrance houses. And until the end of Season 2, Olfactive Melbourne listeners can access T&T directly, with the 10,000-piece minimum waived and 10% off unit pricing. Premium packaging at the scale Australian indie brands actually launch at. Visit tnt-group.com and mention Olfactive Melbourne when you reach out. So, with all of that explained, let's have a smell and take us through our opening notes.
Okay, so I guess I can best describe this as a hint of oyster, right? Which is, there's a whole backstory to that, and I'm happy to share.
Fantastic.
You get the first release of what that actually means, because I do share some of this stuff on my Instagram, but I haven't for Seas. So you get a bit of oyster and you get a bit of sweetness, which is kind of like a very delicate fruit base, very, very delicate. And it sits behind. And you'll see, often I'll talk about sitting in front and sitting in behind. It's actually one of the techniques I use when I make perfume. I sit certain ingredients behind and sit certain ingredients in front. And you have to blend them in a certain way. So the sweetness, which is kind of like a watermelon-y kind of sweetness, that sits behind what is predominantly hopefully a palatable oyster note.
All right. So when you say sitting behind, so that fruity type note is supporting the main note that's sitting in here, which is that oyster note.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with that assessment there. It does feel like it's sort of enveloping that main note. It's there, but it's not the dominant note that's coming out.
Yeah.
And what's really striking as well to me is that the air, as soon as we sprayed it into the air, it's like that behind note is more in the air, but on my skin, I could definitely get the more the oystery scent.
Yeah.
Well, marine.
And the idea is that if we wait, and we'll come to it, I'm sure, but if you wait, you'll find where it kind of travels and it kind of flips around. So there's something about Seas of Inciver. Actually, there's something about all of my perfumes where whether I realized it or not, I actually realized it by the time I made Manish, I think, that I was always using some ingredient that was reminding me of something from back home. But the interesting thing about Seas is I made a very conscious decision to use a certain type of ingredient that I actually really, really liked when you go through the journey, you get all your samples, you get all your different, you're sitting there smelling 200 things, getting really confused.
Yep, been there.
But there was one that really hit me, and I did a bit more research on it because I kind of was curious when I bought it, but then I had spent some more time on it. There's a mollusk. It's like a shell that is often crushed. So let me explain. This is something that's done as a traditional technique back in India, which is where I come from. There's a certain mollusk that's crushed, and then it's burnt. And it's burned into a sticky tar, right? It's like a resin. We call it choya nak. And you do not want to smell that thing at 100% concentration. So there is the most delicate amount of choya nak in here. And the interesting thing about this is it should sit as a base. Now, in my mind, when I thought of it first, it should sit as a base. But as I used this particular ingredient, because I was going for something with Seas, as I used this particular ingredient, I realized that if I could sweeten it, I would get this oyster kind of, note that would come through.
Yeah.
So I'm in love with that thing, and I've tried it with a few different. It's not palatable, and it's another classic example of something that exists in all of these perfumes, which is to play with the off note. So there's lots of really pleasant, really nice smelling things, lots of absolutes, lots of essentials, lots of aroma chemicals that are really pleasant. And then there's stuff that you're like, oh, what is this doing in this? What is this doing here at 100%? It's not happening. But I find that you define a perfume by its off note, at least the way I like to make perfumes rather. In the way I practice it, I often go, it's a bit like life, right? It's not all honey and roses.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of off. And it's the off that gives the character to the perfume for me. and that's what you're getting in the top, which to me was a revelation, because I was going for, in my mind, I'd originally conceived something where the sea hits you at the end, and I was like, no, I'm going to play with this now. This is really interesting, and I was going, what am I getting? And I'm getting a really strong, like when I did it at the first couple of experiments with this, I was like, wow, okay, how do you turn this into a perfume?
Okay.
And then that came through, yeah.
So obviously, we're not distilling oysters and to create an oyster note. We are creating what we call an accord, which is a representation of a smell. And what you're saying is that choya nut is sort of the base of that that accord, but you've brought in a sweet note to then represent the oyster type.
There's a lot more going on, but if you had to think about the main character of the top note, it's the fact that we've kind of blended this. And believe me, it's a real trace element, but it's really powerful, and it does the job in this context.
Fantastic. Choya nut is definitely one of those notes that we've sort of touched on before. We know that there's this very special process called destructive distillation that's required to actually get hold of that note, but it may be one that we need to explore a little bit deeper in the future, because it's an incredibly interesting, but as you said, at 100%, probably quite a challenging sort of note to work with.
Imagine.
Yeah. There's a lot of these types of notes that if you can get it right, it's incredible what you can do. I've got a couple of them that I just have to wait for the perfume to develop in the head, but I really would like to try, and they're very strange, if you will. Not that I love making strange stuff. When it gets interesting, when it hits the olfactive in an interesting way, you can't help it. You just have to keep chasing it, I guess. So there's a few interesting ones in the book, I guess, to explore in the future.
Fantastic, and we look forward to exploring those with you as well. So you've mentioned, some fruity, sweet notes that are sitting in the back. So I guess as supporting notes here, is there a particular fruit or set of fruits that we're sort of using there? That
it's more the watery fruits, the melony, watery kind of fruits. There is a material that I guess has different connotations in the fruit family, I guess. It's called fructone. It's just like a really, really mild. But we've used a couple of, like I wanted to try and do this without the aldehydes, which are really volatile and can sometimes be, like you have to use them very prudently. There's a few aldehydes and a couple others. But this one was more done from the context of sugar, which I'll get to when we get to the heart, because there's a whole story behind what the perfume's actually about. So I wanted to bring a little bit of watermelon into it, which you can do with a couple of, I guess, aroma chemicals that I guess have a little bit of that in them, but there had to be a little bit of sugar in this as well. So you'll catch that when we get to the heart. We'll talk about that.
Fantastic. So I would say that if people are watching or they're listening and they've just heard oyster and watermelon in the opening of a fragrance, that they might think that that's a rather strange sort of combination. To me, absolutely not. In terms of how it's actually sitting on my skin, how it's sitting on the blotter, although, to your point earlier, dramatically different. Yeah. What I'm smelling on the blotter and what I'm smelling on my skin are two different things. This is one that you need to get your nose on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. It's working. It's absolutely, and I'm sure you wouldn't have bottled it, and people wouldn't buy it unless it did actually work. But I guess, how would you describe how the oyster and the watermelon sort of come together here?
Yeah,
what are we sort of getting as an impression?
Yeah. So the idea behind the use of an oyster, kind of Swedish oyster, I'm going to say sweetish because we will get to the sugary bit. But the idea behind a Swedish oyster thing is that generally, and you've, I'm sure, eaten oysters, right?
Yeah.
But generally, it's the I guess when it has an aquatic kind of shellfish kind of flavor to it, it's got, it can be quite opposing to people. Like some people absolutely love it, some people don't in fact, some people just don't like shellfish, and like
Yeah.
you know, that's perfectly fine. But I have never actually mixed oyster with fruit and eaten it. But you could imagine, this is the difference between when something's olfactive versus on the taste bud. You can kind of imagine, you know, when you've got that kind of oyster, I guess that I'm going to say shellfish. I mean, we can say mollusk in this case, but when you've got that oyster thread running through the top, you can't leave it alone. You have to wrap it in something. You have to wrap it around something that's a bit more. I guess it's curious and sweet, and you know, so what we're going for here with the top was essentially, how do you open up in like an aquatic kind of setting? How do you open up? But because Seas of Inciver, right? There's the Inciver is an ancient name, which I'll explain, but the Seas of Inciver were really about a couple of different kind of layers of something that's, again, I come back to the off note, something that gives you a little bit of contrast on marine, something that goes a little bit sweet, something that then will actually dry down into an ambergris, something that brings a little bit of, there's actually a bit of wood in here, you know? So it was anything that you'd find on the ocean, but making it more delicate, delicious, you know, that kind of, like, how do you lift it to be a little softer and a little more, would you eat it? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I would love for you to take us through a bit more of the actual story here, because as you said in the opening, this is around sort of taking you home. And then I sort of thought, okay, well, home is the Macedon Ranges, and there's not a sea, you know, super close to there. So we're obviously talking about the subcontinent here.
Yes.
So take us through what is the actual inspiration and the story around Seas of Inciver.
Okay. So this is the thing, right? It's marine and aquatic, but when I was thinking of seas, it was actually a sea of flavors and smells.
Okay.
And I was recalling when I was making this. I was recalling when I was a young boy. I was about 5. We used to live in a multi-storied house with in a joint family setting down in the south of India, and I was very curious. I would always run upstairs because upstairs was where the kitchen was, and I would sit on this little coir stool on the ground. And we had somebody at home who used to help us with the cooking, and I'd just sit there, and I would particularly be interested when he'd make these chickpea batter things, because he'd make these chickpea batter things and then put them on a bunch of newspapers on the floor, and I was the one that could eat them hot off the newspapers. So I'd spend a lot of time in there, in the kitchen, and ginger was the one thing that I couldn't handle as a kid, because when we cooked ginger, the name for ginger where I come from is Inchi. An ancient name for ginger is Inciver. Right? So I'm sitting in this seas of flavor, and the one thing that's getting me like, oh, why are we cooking with ginger? Why are we cooking with ginger? Why are we eating this stuff? You know, it was not a thing for me as a kid. I do love it now. But there was this sea of flavor, and there was this thing that would always upset me. I'd be like, "Are you cooking anything with ginger?" He says, "We cook everything with ginger." So you know, but I remember sitting there, and there'd be peanut brittle being made, you know, sugary caramelized peanut brittle, and there'd be something cooking in ginger, and then there'd be this stuff that was being made, which was my favorite. That's why I would sit there every day. It was this chickpea batter that was made into like noodles and fried, and I'd just be like popping those in. And I remember that when I first looked at where I wanted to start with seas, that's kind of where it started for me. And I was like, let's do a sea of flavor in there. And we never ate oysters in India. We never did, right? But it was just so happened that I went, what's another off note? You know, let me find another off note. Let me find something else that was really, and I also was kind of looking at soy and ox. So this all kind of came together, and I went, okay, there's something in here. We're just going to chase it. And I started to kind of blend some of that sweet stuff that was being, just the stuff that was happening in the kitchen, and I would try and bring that in. Another interesting thing that happens, though, is that, and I'm sure you've heard other perfumers say this, they might see colors or they might see. I kind of see whole movies.
Oh.
Yeah. So when I'm smelling something, and I used to get this even when I've loved perfume ever since I was a kid. My dad discovered the first, that green Paco Rabanne pour homme. That started it, I guess. I was very curious. Wasn't allowed to touch it. Don't, you're going to use too much of it, blah, blah, blah. But every time I've smelled a perfume, if I'm sitting quietly, I'll see a whole, like a whole bunch of moving images. So the story that's on the box is what I see, and it kept coming back. It happens every time. It happens with all of these perfumes. When I smell something, I see a bunch of moving images. So I was like, okay, this is going to be really difficult, because you were trying to do your like grandmom's kitchen, and then you got into this like choy and nak thing, and you really wanted to pursue that, but that had nothing to do with this. But now you're going to bring that into this, and you're going to really confuse everything. But when I did, I saw the story, which is, I guess, on the box, but the story behind the perfume, and I was like, okay, this is making sense.
Fantastic. So is that a bit of a common theme that runs all the way through the brand, is the tying the memories, I guess, those home movies to the actual composition of the fragrances?
Yeah, but what's interesting is when I smell this fragrance as I'm developing it and it's getting closer, I'm seeing something that's nothing related to where I started. I'm seeing completely different kind of set of pictures, and like literally like a short film. It's bizarre. So I capture that in the narrative, but the origin's always something different.
Right.
Yeah, it's like like I have fun through it, because I get a whole journey. I can kind of like, I can reflect back at my notes and go, this isn't grandma's kitchen anymore. This is something else.
Yeah.
Which is
there's
the fun.
Inspiration, and then there's the creation.
Yeah.
And it's a journey to get there.
Yeah. And it's happened with every single one of them without fail. I can tell you a backstory, and then you'll see the real story in every single one of these perfumes.
Okay, so the memories provide the building blocks, but then it evolves into its own piece of art.
Of course, yeah, that's kind of what it is. And with Seas, the way I wanted it to open was what I was seeing in the pictures in my head. But when it settles, we'll talk about what my childhood in a kitchen with stuff being cooked.
Fantastic. Well, we're actually at that point of the show where we want to let the heart notes settle down. So we've got a chance for us to move into the heart notes. And it does give us an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about your background. Now, you touched on it just very briefly there, that you've always been into perfume. I think you mentioned your dad had a Paco Rabanne. Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that where the story actually starts?
And an Old Spice. He had a Paco Rabanne, and he had an Old Spice. I remember that.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that's where the fascination sort of started with your dad's colognes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Mum had, I think, Poisson Envie. I think, yeah, she had her own. Didn't like Mum's. Sorry, Mum. But yeah, it started there. Then it was the first bottle of Fahrenheit, the first bottle of Safari. You remember these?
Yeah, absolutely. I had Fahrenheit back in the 90s.
Yeah. And then there was a Dolce & Gabbana, and there was Gucci Pour Homme. So it just kind of kept, you can't afford these things, and you're stealing them off your friends or your
absolutely,
and then you're getting them, once in a while. And then I moved here when I was 20. And it's funny. I don't know how long Law's been around, but I remember very, very early on from moving here, I walked in, and I was like, "Oh, good! Look at these guys. This is all different stuff that I've never seen. You get a lot of the designer stuff, but you don't." And so I spent a lot of time there. And then I kind of had a couple of sit down moments. Like literally, you had to sit down after you smell something. I remember. The first time that happened to me was Alessandro Gottieri, Nasomato,
yes.
Black Afghano.
Oh.
sat down, just had to sit, just went outside, sat down on the bench, I remember, and just was like, gosh, like on my skin. On its own, I'm sure it was great, but on my skin, I just went, oh my God. And then it happened again a few years ago. Filippo Scorcionelli,
Yes.
Labs Unum, again, had to sit down. So I get these kind of like, I love when something just makes me stop like that. But perfumes, I mean, I probably didn't have that visceral a reaction earlier, but just over time, it's just, I love it when a perfume makes me, I say, sit down, because it literally, I just go, okay, I'll be back, and I go sit down somewhere, and I'm sitting there with it. So I guess the thing that I realized, and this is what kind of got me into wanting to try and make perfume myself, was I was getting these little, like I'd smell something and I'd be like, what? I've got this kind of image in my head. I'm like, wait, just focus on the smell. And I'm like, no, this is part of it. I can't help it. It's I'd like to say I've always picked my partner's perfumes, 'cause she trusts me more than herself, although she's really good at it too. But I love picking perfumes for people. If I've spent some time with them, I'm like, come on, let me try this, try that, let me smell. It's a thing. And I was like, it's a very weird thing to do, to go and tell people you want to pick perfume for them.
Well, it's because most of us are concerned that we wouldn't pick right. But if you have a talent for it, then it's
I'm just so interested in how stuff would, like, I've always been interested in smells, but it got to a point where I was like, you have to understand the chemistry a bit more. That's what I thought in my head. I was like, let's understand the chemistry a bit more. So I started studying some of the chemistry behind it. I was like, oh God, this is like going back to school. This is so painful. But then that got really interesting, These molecules bind with these. You got two carbons. And I was like, yeah, but there's more to this than just the chemistry and the math around it. And so I went back and I guess that journey has always been. It's always been something that I've been kind of going, no, I don't have enough time for it. I don't have enough time for it. No, I got other things to do. And eventually there came a point where I was like, just get into it. Just do it. Because, you just trust yourself. You'll be able to, you're going to do some weird stuff anyway. You've always been into the weird kind of scents and profiles. It's going to be weird, but just do it.
Like there's something in you just calling you to it.
Yeah. And to do it my way, I guess,
Absolutely. I think, you've mentioned, Sorginelli and I guess that's the Unum brand, which we're familiar with. You've mentioned Nasamato. These brands actually make quite challenging fragrances. They're certainly, they're not designed to be mass appealing designer fragrances. They're ultra niche. And if those are your inspirations, I think it will certainly help viewers and listeners sort of understand the take that you've got with how you approach perfumery as well. And certainly our experience with your fragrances is it doesn't fit within that designer mass appealing box at all. While they are appealing fragrances, they're not designed to be mass appealing fragrances.
Yeah, I'll keep coming back to, playing with the off note. Playing with the off note. Or the off notes in a perfume, I think that's where the magic is for me, at least. That's how I enjoy making perfumes. I'm like, this is great. This smells great. This smells really lovely. You blend it together. You get a really good balanced kind of perfume. That's fine. Now let's put something really weird in.
Yeah.
And let's see where that takes us. Let's let's make that weird thing palatably weird. Still weird.
You can still wear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sparks a little bit of interest in terms of, I guess designer fragrances don't have that little bit of off note in them. They're designed to just be mass appealing, and so they sort of fade into the background of every other smell. But certainly where you wear something, I guess like Seas of Inciver, people are going to smell it and they're going to probably ask the question, what are you wearing? Because it smells different to everything else that's in the room.
Yeah.
So before we go too far down that track, so we've gone through, you've always had an interest in fragrance. You've grown up with it. You're interested in some of the more challenging fragrances. You started to educate yourself in perfume and started to build your own perfumes. At what point did you decide, yep, I'm happy with what I've built and I want to turn this into an actual brand and launch it to the world?
It was about 2 years before I launched that in my mind I was like, I want to share this. I want to put this out here. I think it's, if I had to give somebody a brief on what Vararoha is, I would start with, it's not for everybody,
Yep.
and it's not meant to be. That's the fun of the way I make the perfume. It'll appeal to the people that it appeals to, and for some others, they have very different tastes, and that's perfectly fine. But it was 2 years ago when I went, I want to put this out there. It then took me, it took me about a year then of, essentially just doubting whether I could do it and going back to some of the formulations, going, what if I improve this? What if I improve that? And then, which I didn't. I actually haven't changed anything since I decided to. But then there was, I guess, in a way, we'd come out of COVID and we were like, you got kids, you got stuff going on at home, you got all this stuff to kind of work through. But about a year ago, I said, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to get this out there? And I wanted it to be really, look, it's not an expression of exactly who I am or anything like that. It's not, it's the I was like, how do you put a brand out there where each perfume has its own story, its own, like it's got its own novel behind where it came from, what it did, how it did it, how it's supposed to present itself. And I went, how would you think about putting perfumes out? And I'm like, I guess if I could give it, I can't, but if I could give them away for free, I would. Like, I'd just give them away. I can't do that. Definitely can't. But, and I was like, well, what's that word that we use? It's like there's a word we use in Sanskrit. We refer to it as a boon, B-O-O-N, which is like a gift or a blessing or a gift. And Vararoha means, one of the meanings is ready to offer those gifts. Oh. So I was like, all right, this feels right. We are ready to offer. So, that's how Vararoha came about. And then I later on found out it also meant handsome woman or woman with fine hips. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with that too.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, just start thinking about this as a little bit less about a brand and a product. And think of it more like you're just offering this stuff, like, sure, you've got to charge for it. I get it, right? I've got to pay for the stuff that goes into it and packaged it and, but really, I definitely think about this as offering gifts. So I sometimes get, not sometimes, I often get, hey, have you got a sample pack? I know I haven't got a sample pack yet, but I'll get that on a message. And this is not an invite to send me, hey, have you got a sample pack messages? But I just send them. I just give them.
Yep.
I'm like, here, I've got plenty of samples, small, the 2 mil ones, whatever. 5 mil. I'll just send them because I'm like, it feels good to share them. Yes, they're paying for it. Yes, I get it. But it feels good to share them. And I really do think of them as like, if someone had those formulas, they could make them again, and they're something that will last, for a very long. They'll just last. You can put something out there in the world, and they're for people. So, that was kind of the philosophy behind the how Vararoha presents itself.
Fantastic. I love that. So Vararoha, I should say, Sanskrit. Mm-hmm. So obviously that is your cultural background. Coming from India, it means to offer up something, and you're offering up your fragrances. So when you launched your brand, how many fragrances did you offer up to start with? Was it the entire range that we've got here today?
Yeah, all 5.
All 5.
So they were ready. They've been ready for a long time. So I said, we'll do 5. And then the sixth one is a few months away, I think. It's ready. There's a few more that are ready, but the sixth one that I want to put out there could have gone with them, but I was like, no, you're rushing. Just go with what's been waiting for a while. The sixth one was just as I was building the business, I was building it. That's a really interesting one too. But I said, just go with the 5. So I put the 5 out and I said, just sit,
Yeah.
let them do their things.
Good to know that we've got more in the pipeline and that Vararoha is going to be expanding in the future. Fantastic. What an incredibly interesting story around your background, the establishment of the brand. And I think, to take the point that the brand doesn't necessarily represent each one of the fragrances, that each one of the fragrances stands on its own as its own story, and that really the brand means I'm offering up my story, my creative output, but each one stands alone. So you're not necessarily inferring from the name what the fragrance is necessarily going to be.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So I think we've probably had about 10 or 15 minutes for the fragrance to dry down now. I think it might be time to circle around to our heart notes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Fantastic.
Sure. Yeah. So if we just go back to the perfume pyramid just for a moment, and we think about the heart notes as being the center or the core of the perfume pyramid. And the heart notes tend to appear once those light, volatile top notes have dissipated, and they help the fragrance to transition nice and smoothly from those top notes down to the deeper, denser base notes. The heart is really where the personality resonates in the fragrance. It's the true essence of the perfume. And it's normally things like florals or aromatic herbs or spices that we have that bloom in the heart of the fragrance. This edition of Olfactive Melbourne is proudly sponsored by Silver Australia. Silver Australia design and shape their jewellery in their studio in Melbourne, and they're pleased to offer Olfactive Melbourne customers 20% off when you use the code MASA20. So with that being said, let's have a chat about the heart notes.
Yeah. Do you get the ginger?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
So-
definitely ginger and a bit of sweetness
Yeah, there's like
coming through there as well, which I can't quite nail down.
hard
But
to pinpoint. Yeah.
There's a hint of licorice in there, but there's the idea was that the heart of this perfume is the inchi, the inciver, the ginger.
yes.
And I wonder what my 5-year-old self would have thought about this, but yeah. And the idea was to wrap the ginger around something that was still sweet, a little bit of licorice, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of so it's always to take the off note and to wrap it around something with this
interesting.
perfume. Yeah.
Is the ginger? What I think I'm picking up with the ginger note is it's airy.
Yeah, it's an EO. It's actually a ginger from India. It's an essential oil. It's not a very harsh ginger. It's a fairly delicate ginger.
Yeah.
It's been formulated to be a little bit more prominent, certainly in the heart. But again, the idea was to try and wrap it around something soft. So and for most people, it's funny because for most people, ginger is like, what are you talking about? It's not an off note. For me, it is.
Yeah.
Which I love. Don't get me wrong.
I
The idea was
quite
to-
like ginger in fragrance.
Yeah, I do. I think,
you.
this ginger combined with whatever the sweet note is in here, you say it's like a sugary.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sweetness along with the ginger makes it like a sweet ginger.
It's warm. It's warming almost too.
Yeah. So, I did play there's all of the sweet stuff is always in traces because, but there's you got one ginger, but then you got a little bit of licorice. There's a little bit of, I guess, even a little bit of ethyl maltol, which is like a cotton candy-ish kind of thing. But they're all very, and on their own, they don't, you have to kind of build that that envelope around the perfume. So they're all, you don't want them to swallow and stun the ginger. So you don't want them to, you just want them kind of lightly around them. So the idea was to make sure that in the heart where the ginger sat, you had, which is, you had this little sea of sweet things around it, which is where I think Inciver, and there's one other that are slightly different, where you're kind of complementing where the off note, or I'm sorry, I keep going back to off note, where the off note is actually playing the role that is predominant in the note of in the I guess in the pyramid, if you want to call it that, right? Where the off note keeps coming through. With some other ones, with some other perfumes, the off notes kind of just balancing it, just like it was beautiful, and then you kind of just set it off a little bit quirky. But whereas for me, and like again, ginger may not be everybody's off note, but it is for me, so I used it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because we often talk about bridging notes in perfumery, and there is a particular note, say in our opening, that helps us bridge our way through to the heart. So a typical expression may be that, say, if our heart note is leather, we might have saffron in the opening, and that serves as a bridging note because
Or
they've got
osmanthus.
so similar notes that sort of bridges through. But what's actually happening with your fragrances is it's actually the off note that serves as the bridging note between the opening and the heart, and I'm assuming then the
in
heart
this
to
one,
the base.
in Inciver, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, and I've got to say, I mean, we've tried. You can't imagine the number of fragrances that we've tried, and we've tried a lot on the show. This particular fragrance, the variation on my skin compared to Robin's skin, compared to the blotter, I've never seen such a dramatic change. I mean, you did warn us that
Yes.
this plays very, very differently on people's skins, but I guess I sort of underestimated what you were saying there until Robin sort of stuck her hand under my nose.
Yeah.
It smells very, very different on our skins.
Would you mind if I just
Yeah,
had a quick
sure.
smell? I'm just curious.
Absolutely.
See, sorry. Have you got any
I just had a moisturizer.
moisturizer? I was gonna.
I
Ask.
tried not to make it a scented one though.
No.
So
So it's holding on to certain things on your skin, and oil will do that. You know this, right? Oil and moisturizer will do it. So it's probably holding on to certain things, whereas it's releasing certain things on
yours is
skin.
sweeter.
Yeah. I usually find that if
Mine's more marine-y.
yeah, absolutely. We often find this though, don't we? That if there's a sweet note in the fragrance, that the
Yes.
sweet comes out on my skin
comes
a
out
little bit
on-
more.
Yeah, initially.
And if there is a salty accord or something like that, it's a bit more predominant on your skin. I love the way this is playing on my skin, by the way. I love the sweetness of it. But it's not, when we say sweet, we're not talking about cotton candy sweet. We're just talking about
There's a trace of it, believe it or not. There's a trace of cotton candy, but there's a trace of lots of different types of sugars, or I wouldn't call them gourmands, but like brown sugar, little licorice, little cotton candy, just traces, because you don't want it to be sugary. You want it to just kind of have that sugar, like that sweetish kind of wrap, if you will.
and that's the ethyl maltol that you were mentioning just before.
Just a trace,
Just
yeah.
a trace of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I've got to say the anise or the licorice is coming out of my skin as well, and I love that. I think it's just such a brilliant note. I think it adds some depth and complexity to this fragrance as well. I think it's a bit of a master stroke to have this in here. So in terms of the story that we're telling here, so obviously we're gone to I guess Grandma's kitchen. This is where we were in the opening. We had this really vivid scene of you're grabbing every type of food that's coming out, and you're grabbing it before everybody else can because you can handle the heat, except for this Inciver, so that this ginger. So I guess where are we at now in that story? We're at the point where you're starting to encounter that ginger, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So this is where the backstory and the story of what comes to me when the perfume is coming together. This is where the story, and they're completely different stories, right? So the story that the perfume brings forward when I'm formulating it is really of a girl that's really simple, who's a pearl diver. And this is when the Choyanak came in, because when the Choyanak came in, I went, oh my God, this is like pearls. I'm getting this sense of like pearl diving deep in the ocean. And I've spent a lot of time in the ocean. I mean, I know I live in Macedon Ranges, but that was where I grew up. And there was this kind of, okay, and this was, I think, the third or the fourth one that I made. So by then I was used to this kind of thing that happened where I'd start out with an idea and it would change into something else. But in terms of the perfume, the story to the perfume, the idea was that what I was seeing was, I guess a pearl, like a bit of a rebel in a man's world, like someone who'd, was pearl diving is it's dangerous, it's perilous work, it can be very rewarding work, and it's ancient work. It's work that people have done, that it's an ancient thing that people have done for many, many, many centuries. The idea was that, a girl with a simple life heading home after an evening of pearl diving. I was like, where is all? I stopped questioning it now. I'm like, where is all this stuff coming from? And you'll find hints of it on my Instagram feed, because I'm trying to tell the story, and people are like, what is this all about? And I'm like, it's hard to explain. But this girl walking home, few pearls clutched in her hand, walking back home, the smell of ginger coming through as she's getting to her home, to her house. Mom's cooking, and she's walking past the water lilies and things like that. And this is what is very interesting, because if I had stuck with Grandma's Kitchen, it would not have been Seas of Inciver. It's because I allowed it to. You allowed to. Okay, so what else are you getting? And then what would you like to? What else would you like this picture to look like? And so I guess there are two stories, and one's from my real life, and the other is from my, I guess, olfactive,
your creative life.
So it's the marriage of these two things, and so I could have told you the story about my grandmother's kitchen, but that's a little bit more. That's a little bit. Oh, it's interesting, but it's also a bit like weird compared to. This is what happens when the perfume comes together. So I think the way to probably describe the heart and the dry down is we're definitely like one's a kitchen, one's an ocean, and but we've definitely left the aroma of the kitchen and we've left that behind, and we're now in a pretty aquatic ambergris. You'll find that in the base. You're in a world, you're in an oceanic kind of. I guess you're in an oceanic kind of olfactive experience now, where you've gone, but there's ginger in it. There's no ginger in the seas, and unless you blend both of these stories together, and it's not something you can tell. But unless you kind of blend both of these stories together, you don't have any cross-reference to where they come. This is why often with these perfumes, they're like, so that's the story. And I'm like, oh, if you only knew where it started from.
It's a fascinating fragrance, because like I keep going back to sniff it, and sometimes I'm getting the sweetness, and then other times I'm getting the watery.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think the back and forth. But now I have this image of the pearl diver coming home to the kitchen, and she's still wearing, or she still smells like the ocean but she's in that scent bubble of the kitchen.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like two disconnected stories, but to me it flows quite nicely, right? You're you in a kitchen floating in a sea of
Flavors
and smells, and then
and sweet ones, and I guess gingery ones, and all kinds. Yeah,
absolutely. And then that story evolves into an actual manifestation of the sea and your interpretation of how that unfolds at this part of the story, which is the pearl diver and the actual ocean. So to me, it makes sense. But I guess we also understand that there shouldn't be any doubt in perfumery, especially this level of niche perfumery. This is art, right? You are expressing your art form and your story through the fragrance, and that's expression. That's what it is.
I've often found that with Seas, I get people talking a lot about the oysters, and I'm always a wait for the dry down kind of guy, because you should get a hint of it through, but you should be in Gingerland.
Oh, we're in Gingerland for sure now.
Yeah.
And certainly as I said, the anise or the licorice is coming out on my skin a little bit more. The oyster type smell, it's there, but it's now sitting right in the background, and everything else is in the foreground.
Yeah.
I think quite often when we describe the perfume pyramid and we talk about opening notes, heart notes, and base notes, I do make it sort of sound like the opening notes disappear altogether. What I mean when I say dissipate, I mean that they start to fall into the background. They don't disappear altogether, and they still make up this tapestry of what the fragrance is all about.
You know, an interesting thing to do if you're ever kind of fooling around making your own perfumes. This is why I say sit behind, sit in front. If you literally take your blotter and you put either an essential oil or an aroma chemical or something, then you take another one and you sit it in front and you just wave it in and out. You'll get a different scent to if you spun it around and you brought it. Of course, they're the two scents. I do them sometimes with 12, 15 ones because I'm building in my own way a certain kind of scent memory or something that I'm chasing. But sitting something in front versus behind, actually, you see how they kind of, like, if you're only talking about two notes, then you're going to get both notes, but they're going to come at you differently. And that's, part of that technique goes into how you, as you go down the layers, how you leave something behind and you keep going.
And that whole foreground, background piece. We might have to have a play with this. We do have quite a lot of raw ingredients at home. We actually we picked up a kit that was done by one of our previous guests, Vigel. He did a collaboration with a company called Jalu, and they put together some raw materials. We purchased that pack as well. So we've got a lot of those, and we can have a little play around with that concept at home.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Now, we're about to explore the broader range like we do during this heart note section. But I think just before we do, there's an important point that you've made a couple of times here, and we've sort of danced around it a little bit, but I think given it's a key theme that ties all of these fragrances together, and it's the off note. Why? What's the fascination with having an off note, or it's just something that's I think you sort of said, hey, life doesn't it's unfold perfectly. Is that some of the ethos? Talk to us.
It's just life. I feel like if it's perfectly beautiful, it's almost, just for me, it's a little bit boring. I love the imperfections. I love, it's a bit like wabi-sabi. The Japanese one where they break the plates and they put them back together. So much more beautiful. So the off note thing, I mean, I don't want to overdo it here. I don't want to kind of go, it's all about off notes.
Yeah.
It's not all about off notes, but that's where the character of some of these come through. You'll see it in Gaucho. You'll certainly see it in Smokestack if we ever get down there deeply. But it's just, for me, it's not finished unless I've counterbalanced it with something. I'm not looking for unusual. I'm just looking for something that will give it a little more character.
Yeah.
Sometimes it starts with an off note. This one started with ginger, which is not an off note, but for me it is.
Yeah.
Right. But I just find that it makes it feel more real for me as a perfume. some of the favorite ones that I've had have had off notes, the ones that have made the biggest impression on me. I'm not trying to model them, but I understand where they're coming from. I understand where they're challenging you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice to wear challenging perfumes if you like them.
Absolutely.
Because often you'll find with the ones that are a little, I guess, niche-y, it's always wait for that dry down because it's going to surprise you. It's going to do something a little bit different. You're going to be like, am I wearing the same perfume? And hopefully you'll see the thread right through. Nothing ever is purely a top or purely a mid or purely a base and doesn't go linearly through that pyramid. But just perfumes with character, they just excite me. They're like, it's my passion to kind of explore those. And there have been some amazing ones. And there's some ones by Australian perfumers that I really like. I mean, that are beautifully balanced, don't get me wrong, but they've got this little thing that's a little bit,
something.
Interesting.
A little
It's
something,
interesting.
something
It's
in
an
it.
element of intrigue to it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. The scene that was going through my head as you were taking me through this is the Matrix, right? There's a scene in the Matrix, right, where I think one of the bad guys, I think his name was Agent Smith, was sitting down with at the main protagonist Neo, and he was saying that they used to put people into the simulation and give them a perfect life, and people would go insane, or they wouldn't be able to stay within the simulation because perfect is actually not a true representation of life, and that was the real, I guess, that was playing in my own mind as you were describing that, because a real life is not sunshine and rainbows. It's sunshine and rainbows and muddy paths and trips and falls, and that's the color of life. And so you're representing that within your fragrances as well. So I love that story.
And some people will remember the hard bits or the tough bits a lot more than they remember the good times. But this is perfume. It's not supposed to make you stink, right? It's there to kind of, it's there to wear as part of your attire or the way you make your way out in the world. So you don't necessarily want to smell like, I don't know, rotten fish, no. But when there's a little bit like, there's something that and it should complement. It shouldn't be like, oh, what is this horrible thing in the middle of a beautiful perfume? No, that's not an off note. It's not a wrong note. It's an off note. It just a little bit to the left.
It challenges you just a little bit. I mean, there's no light without the dark. There's no sweet without the sour. All of these things are part of the tapestry of life that make things interesting. So I think with that said, so that we know what the common theme, I guess, is that does tie the collection together, shall we explore the broader range?
Sure.
So where would you recommend that we start?
How about we look at Gaucho?
Gaucho?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we'll get Robin can grab Gaucho. I think she lined it all up for us at the start of the show. Okay. Now, obviously, because we are exploring the broader range and we've got a limited amount of skin, we're going to only be spraying these out onto the blotters, which is going to sort of limit the full experience here. So we're going to really rely on you to take us all the way through the various different notes and obviously the story that goes along with it. So let's start first of all. We'll have a bit of a sniff, but Gaucho, tell us about the name.
So Gaucho, for people that may not know, is I guess the name for a South American cowboy.
Okay.
And the people that work across the Pampas and the Patagonian plains, and it's interesting terrain. It's a bit dry, and it's cold in winter. It's warm in summer. It's one of those. This perfume actually came off from a standoff with a 9-year-old. He wouldn't pick his orange peels for almost 3 weeks of a bench on our front porch. And I was like, I'm not getting him. And he's like, oh, I'll get him. And he never did. And so thank you, Ruben. So so when I finally did pick them up, these orange peels, they smelled like nothing. You couldn't smell anything. There was no smell. And I went, and for whatever reason, because this stuff happens to you in very strange ways, I went, let's make a perfume where we dry down an orange all the way into smoke and fire, right?
Interesting.
So I started to work on that. So of course, you're getting a strong orange note at the top, an orange peel. There's a little bit of almond in it. There's, I guess, some hay, some myrrh, and then in the dry down, there's a bit of leather, which will not come for a little while, but it will be there. I can promise you, it'll be there, and it'll be there quite prominently. There'll be a little bit of leather and I guess some clear wood and some just a few woods, right? But the idea was, and again, different on skin. I'm actually wearing gaucho right now, but this was an attempt to take an orange and dry it to its and still keep it, because like I've smelled, right? You've smelled for a month-old dried orange peel, nothing. Yeah, it's all gone. Yeah. And it's a volatile thing. It's not a, I mean, the fact that it would last 2 weeks is still saying something. It's like a top. But I wanted to keep it. And if you held on to this particular scent strip, maybe an hour later or an hour and a half later, you'll get what I mean, where you're still getting an orange, but now we've gotten past the orange almond bit. We've gotten into the orange hay myrrh kind of mid. And then when we get down to the end, you're getting a little bit of orange and leather. And the idea was to bring that through. Now, the gaucho is one of those stories that come as I'm putting it together. It's got nothing to do with my son. He is not a cowboy. Yeah. He's not. But this whole thing about gaucho eating orange peels under the stars at night, a horse nearby, you'll get a little stable in it. Stable floor, I think someone once referred to it. Okay. You'll get that later on. That was kind of the movie that turned up. So I wrote the notes down and I put that on the box. But the origins, you guys know, is a standoff with a 9-year-old who wouldn't pick his orange peels.
So I have absolutely started to pick up a bit of a theme here. We start with a core story, much like Seas of Inciver, which started in a kitchen and then turned into a pearl diver. We've got a 9-year-old who is, standoff over an orange peel that's been drying down. But then you bring in that movie, the overlay of how that's been expressed. And this is your gaucho, this is your cowboy wearing their cowboy leathers. They've got their, of course, where they adjust their horse, and there's that hay type smell, barnyardy type smell that's in there.
There's a bit of green in it as well, There's a bit of green in.
Certainly in that opening.
Yeah, there's a little bit of geosmin and a little bit of triplol, but the idea is that it's more dry than it is green. It's still green, but it's still more dry. So you'll get like a hay note as it dries down. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't smell the leather yet, but I know it's there, and I know that there's a lot. And tobacco, of course, and I don't smell the tobacco as strongly yet, but it's there.
It's amazing with notes that are that strong, because leather is quite a prominent note in a fragrance, and so is tobacco, to be honest, depending on what type of tobacco that you use. How you can actually hold it at bay in this formulation, and it's not going to present itself till later in the dry down, considering that the opening notes are actually quite light. They're orange, they're citrusy type notes.
There is some bergamot as well in the opening. So, I mean, it's not the lightest of the light, but for me, it was, again, how you wrap them,
Yeah.
And if, like I said, if you leave this for another 15, 20 minutes, you'll definitely get the tobacco. You'll definitely get
that leather coming through as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What a really interesting scent. Do you like this one?
You know what I do? I'm absolutely going to have to spray some on my hand later to see what it smells like on skin. But yeah, I do.
So
very interesting and intriguing.
I guess to my nose, because it's quite appealing to me, this has quite a manly sort of ness to it. But I guess, do you work with gender?
My partner wears gaucho all the time.
Okay, so it's definitely a unisex, unisex fragrance.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain people I'm thinking of, men or women that turn up. So obviously there's like, I guess, a gender bias in when I'm formulating.
Yeah.
But the idea is not to really anchor anybody in, and I'm glad. A friend of mine loves Stella's rifle, wears it, and Stella's rifle, but it can.
Yeah. So it stretches across genders, but it's really it's preference based rather than you're aiming at a particular gender.
I think it's because the scent is quite strong and it's got a huge. Well, it feels like it has a presence. It's just about the person, the individual, whether this would be something that you would carry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess to me this is a bit more of a wintry type scent than it would be for summer, just because it is quite a potent fragrance. Is that sort of what you were aiming at?
Well, it started in summer, it finished in winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going all the way through the
An
seasons there.
evening,
Yeah. But I wear it in winter.
Yeah.
Because I like it in the cold. I mean, I guess the cold and the heat on your skin does different things. I mean, the season does different things. Your skin is either, the air and the atmosphere is warmer, of course, but your skin as well will be different in winter. It'll be drier. It'll be, it suits a winter skin kind of, but I've worn it in summer and it's different, but it's still,
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate to sort of pigeonhole fragrances into a particular season or a particular event, but it's always good. I guess you can't smell through the camera, right? And you can't smell through the through the sound. So just to give a bit of guidance, if they wanted to pick it up, what sort of
of course,
season might be appropriate.
you can imagine it perfectly in a winter setting. Warm fires. I always say, if you're ever looking up at the stars, if it's a clear night, you don't have the light pollution. I don't,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a clear night. You're looking up at the stars. Sit down. If it's not freezing, or at least get warm, sit down, stare up, spray some gaucho, and think about life. It's one of those. If you sit with it long enough, this is the one that changes the most. This will keep evolving. And it surprises me sometimes.
Fantastic. I think I might have to bang some on skin for the drive home. And I've got to say, you do live in a beautiful part of the world. We were talking just before the show. I'm also from that part of the world. So I sort of grew up in the Wombat State Forest in a little suburb called Greendale, barely a suburb, sort of a little pinpoint on a map. Not too far away from the Macedon Ranges. We've got viewers and listeners from all over the world. So for people who maybe don't know the Macedon Ranges, what they might know, something that's quite famous in the area is hanging rock, and something that everybody knows. I mean, when you think about Australia, you probably think, prawns on the barbie, and you think, picnic at Hanging Rock, and you think dingo stole my baby, right? Like let's do all of the of the really Australiana pieces, but Hanging Rock is a very famous area.
It's a stunning archaeological. I mean, it's a stunning piece of rock, if you will. Very different, It's also where I think I saw a couple of really good concerts, because they do.
They do.
They do a couple of concerts.
And they do races up there as well.
Races,
the Hanging Rock races. And I think from my research, Hanging Rock is on one of the major ley lines, energy lines. So a great place to sort of feed your energy and your creative output.
Yeah, it's a good place on a weekday. I'll tell you that much. Weekend, maybe not. Lots of people.
I'm sure, but that's the only time we get up there is on the weekends, and it is quite popular. But it's a great walk if you're in Victoria or visiting Victoria. Doing the walk up Hanging Rock is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, so which fragrance should we explore next?
We can just go in order, if you will, if you want to.
Fantastic.
I think it's Stella's Rifle next.
Stella's Rifle next.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to spray this one out onto some more blotters here. So while Robin's spraying that out, why is this one called Stella's Rifle?
Okay. Let's
have a smell.
Pink pepper, strong.
Wow. Yes. Yeah.
Stella's Bullets.
Okay. Those are the bullets.
Sparkling pink pepper, shots fired. It's a delicate pink pepper is a lot more delicate than black is.
Yeah.
It's but when you combine it with a few things, you want to. Okay, so here's the here's the backstory. Stella's rifle was I wanted to work with a couple of classics, jasmine, pink peppercorn, right? I wanted to bring those together, and as I was building it, I was getting this image of a girl with a shotgun. I was like, what is going on, right? I don't know where this stuff comes from. And it only happens with perfume. I promise you, if I'm eating, I'm not seeing movies in my head. But it's only when I'm sitting quietly and undisturbed and blending. So let's go with a shotgun. I was like, what is going on here? The idea was that she's approaching a house on a hill that's dimly lit, candles in there. And I was getting an emotion, like which is not, I often just get a very calm kind of sense when I'm blending. But I was getting this emotion. It was rage. It was like absolute quiet rage. Wow. It was like a jealous rage. I'm like, oh my God, she's going to blow somebody's head off. I was like, let's do this. This is so much fun. Let's go. So then I was like, okay. Pink pepper, opening shots, bullets.
Yeah.
Soften this with jasmine, right? And then, so you get that balance. But then I was like, I want this to finish in a really calming way because the pink pepper is going to go, in the story, I don't know if she shot anybody or not. But the point is eventually the pink pepper would leave. But I don't want it. I don't want that rage. I don't want that anger or not anger, but that just like that.
That emotion.
Yeah, that extreme passion. I want it to soften.
Yeah.
Right? So once it leaves, it kind of softens into this floral, predominantly jasmine. There are a couple others. And then I wanted a soft wood. And that's ambergris, which is like West Indian sandalwood. It's not a sandalwood, but it's like a
similar.
And it's got a slightly sweet finish to it. So those are the predominant, I guess, notes that you kind of take the journey on.
So you speak about having notes in the foreground and then notes in the background. So the from what I'm getting here, pink pepper is in the foreground and the jasmine's sitting behind. So providing that support.
Just to catch it.
Yeah, so it's softening it so that we're peppering the person with bullets. That's Stella's firing away there, but we've got that sort of soft feminineness in the background. While this is not a feminine perfume, and I'm assuming this one is unisex as well because again, this is incredibly appealing to me.
It's gorgeous.
It just sort of softens that quite bright, sort of pink pepperiness. Now, you've described the other notes that this dries down to. We're not going to get there yet because the jasmine and the pink pepper is quite prominent here. So once we dry down, we get into that more woody, sort of soft.
Yeah,
note.
it'll be a soft
green.
Yeah,
my nose.
there's a little bit of ivy-ish, kind of like triploly, kind of. There's a bit of that. Again, there's a little bit of like dry grass. Okay. Not hay like gaucho, but there's like a dry grassy kind of note. And then I absolutely wanted it to just settle into a really soft wood and like the bullet was a distant memory. So again, will take a while, but you'll get there. And then the story behind it was this girl approaching this hill, and I did not want to know whether she shot or not, and it wouldn't turn out. I was like, did she kill anybody? No, I don't know. But she jumps the fence, and it kind of stopped, and that's what I saw. So I put it down.
All right. So this is the open-ended story of Stella and her rifle.
Yeah, we
you
don't
know.
know what
Yeah,
happened.
what
We don't know why
happened?
she was opening fire. We don't know whether she actually killed anybody, but that's her story.
Yeah, I
It
think
started
that
off
this
with a
story,
bang.
it certainly intimates like her heart held together with a quiet, jealous rage. I think that's what I've got in there. So it's certainly about something to
Jealousy.
do with jealousy.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
But and I cannot tell you where this started. It was literally I just wanted to work on this particular one. I was like, I want to work with jasmine, and I want to work. Now, the reason I picked jasmine in the first place is because this was supposed to be something that I would work on, and I was going to explore it becoming something sacred. Because the white jasmine, current flora, the jasmine that this is based off, is used in temples in India. So, like I said, remember, there's always something
Yeah.
from India. So I sat down to go. I remember that we call it malipu, which means flower, mali flower, and women wear it in their heads, in their hair,
Mm.
and you get it as offerings So when you're walking into a temple, it'll be there. And I remember going with my grandmom when I was a little fellow, and you'd see, I've been to quite a few temples in the past. Not now, but and you'd see them on the floor. They'd sell it to you, and you'd take it and you'd offer it. So I started there, and then it turned into this this girl that
Mm.
was Anyway, so that's
It's gorgeous.
that's
What
the
really
story.
happened?
It's got a bit of a there's an earthiness in there for me as well.
Mm.
So sort of maybe a patchouli type of a note. So what that's giving me is, now that you've painted the story, she's approaching the house, her lover's inside, maybe doing something untoward. She's jealous. She's got that rage. She's got her rifle. She's in the jasmine bush on the ground, pointing fire. This is the story that's playing in my head, right? And we've fired off all of our shots, and she's walking away, not knowing necessarily whether she's she's ended them or not. And
Yeah.
she's walking off into the sunset. That's my story.
Well, you're right on the patchouli, because when I was suggesting that there's a little bit of, but it's a drier kind of, like, what I wanted to do was dry that green down as well on here, because sometimes the greens can be, and patchouli is very helpful in that context, right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful hippie scent, I guess, right?
Yep.
But sometimes the greens can be very fresh. Yeah. Here I wanted to leave that with the jasmine and the pink peppers. It's actually a very stark-ish kind of blended perfume. It's like you're trying to not keep it juicy and fresh, and even greens can be like really wet. It's not. It's a dry perfume, and it will get there. And I'm getting the ambergris now. So
Absolutely. I think I'm not, whether intentional, unintentional, subconscious, not sure, but you mentioned patchouli, you mentioned hippie, all right? And I guess from our generation, we probably know what we're talking about here in terms of hippies. Not that we were necessarily around in the 60s when the hippies and the yippies were around, but the hippies did wear a lot of patchouli. And when you think about a hippie, what do you sort of associate them with? Well, it's a lot of Indian culture. So really sort of the Beatles were a huge influence on hippie culture.
Yeah.
They were very much obsessed with bringing Indian culture and religion and enlightenment, and so you sort of associate patchouli and India together, somewhat consciously or subconsciously.
yeah,
So,
Yeah, you do.
there's a lot of ingredients in these perfumes that, I mean, I'm only interested in using because they're things that I know from my time when I was in India, when I was growing up as a boy, and I remember them. I'm like, oh, I remember this. So when I'm smelling all of the different things that I'm bringing in, and some things I straight away recognize, and some things I'm going, hey, I know what this is. We used to call it samrani. Okay, so this is what it is, And I'm like, oh, and so that helps sometimes with, like, how do we blend this? How are we going to put this together? It's the benefit of having been in a completely different setting. In fact, different names for these things, and then saying, oh yeah, now that's giving me some ideas about what I'd like to put this with and then carrying on from there. But they're not Indian-oriented perfumes, but they use a lot of, as in, you wouldn't look at them and go, it smells just like India. No. Or it smells like the sense of India, like, I don't know, tea and railway stations and, food. And but they're very heavily influenced, I guess. So you're right in that context.
Yeah.
I guess they smell like your creative output. And of course, your creative output is based on your background. And your background is, of course, an infusion of your Indian background and your Australian background.
Yeah.
And that's what's being expressed here. So I would agree with you. It's that they don't smell like an Indian profile scent, but certainly the influences is there, and it adds that flavor. So you're blending your background in. You've always got the off note, and you've always got that sort of blended story or evolution of the story. So I think we're getting a really good sense of Vararoha. Fantastic. All right, which one should we move on to next?
All right. Manish boy. Is that
Manish
right?
boy.
Manish boy.
Yeah, I think we probably missed that in the speakers there. So Rob reached for Manish boy. So tell us, Manish boy. I think we can sort of imply from the name what this one means, but tell us the story. What is the name behind the name?
Manish boy. So you can get the lemon. There's a little bit of heliotrope. And there's a hint of agar as well. And linden blossom. So Manish boy is it's probably like I keep saying, it's the least understood or maybe the most understood. And I haven't talked to thousands of people, but most people are like, interesting. And I'm like, oh, there's a very interesting story to Manish boy. So when I made this, what I wanted to do at the time was I was very much thinking about very serious young people. Don't ask me why, right? I was thinking very much about that. And how they're often having to push back against norms or conventions, and this is how we do things, and the courageous ones have to walk away, right? So we saw that in the 80s when there was the whole, when it was a struggle for people who were gay to kind of, make their way in the world. They needed a lot of courage. We saw that. We see that. I mean, I'm kind of reflecting on even today, when you look at people today, the young people today, and you're kind of going, it's not an easy way. There may not be a very easy path over the next few years, but it's going to need courage. And the idea behind this and the formulation for this, in fact, almost every ingredient, not every ingredient, but a lot of the core ingredients all happened on a drive back from the city one day, back home. And we'd been away, and my young fella wanted to go to church. He'd never seen church. He was very curious about what was inside of a church. He'd never been in a temple. He hasn't been in a temple yet, but he was very curious. He wanted to go see. So his mom said, I'll go in with him, and she took him in, and I waited in the car. And it was the one in East Melbourne,
Yes.
Did you know which one I'm talking about?
I do.
I can't remember the name. But so I was parked there, and I saw this girl come running out, and I can only best describe her as she kind of resembled Peggy from Mad Men.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the actress, I'm talking about the character. She kind of resembled that. She came running down the steps, and she had this really warm embrace in kiss with this person that I could see in the profile. Looked like it wasn't dressed like her at all. It was very different. This person had a jacket on, some boots, and it turned around, and they were both women. And I went, I look at my judgment. I looked at this person from behind and assumed this was a man. And they went off. They went off walking. And, I kind of forgot about it. Then as I started driving, I started thinking about a number of different things. And I was like, what's what smells like judgment more than anything else? And for some reason, I was like, heavy curtained mothballs, right? Mothball-y,
Yeah.
heavy curtains, like, but thick and someone looking at you, and these images started to come early, and I was like, "We're gonna get home. We're gonna start blending. I can't. What? Stop. Wait." But I was seeing this picture of a girl walking away from her life, the one that her mother expected her to have,
Yeah.
and going towards a new one, and the judgment as she parted the curtains. It's so clear in my head. Parted the curtains, the mothballs. I was like, I gotta get the mothballs in. I gotta figure that out. Curtains. I gotta get some heavy curtains in. But she still goes to church. She's comfortable. She built her own temple or her own church within herself. She's happy. She's comfortable as a person. It could be a man or woman, whatever. And I said, okay, we're gonna go to church with this one, or a temple with this one. It's gonna be our own. It's not gonna be one that's dictated by you. This is where you go. This is how you pray. This is how you do it. So it's for the temples and churches we build within ourselves. And maybe it's worth talking about some of the notes. There's frankincense, myrrh. There is some labdanum. There's some agar wood. It certainly opens with like a lemony kind of
Absolutely.
opening. There's the mothballs, if you can smell them.
Yeah.
You can.
can.
Once you said it, I'm like, oh, yeah.
It wasn't until you said it though that I got it.
Yeah.
And I went, oh
Made the
yeah, that
connection.
I was trying to make the connection in my brain, and then I went, yeah, actually I do remember that smell, and I think the idea with the heavy curtains and that church type environment, I'm getting that memory. Yeah.
And then the I guess, well, I just lost my train of thought. There was another note that I really wanted to talk about in here. Yeah, the linden blossom, like hope. It's like there's it's not heavy. It doesn't have to be. If you can. The idea was if you can find your own place within yourself, then and not worry about external judgment or expectations and not be weighed down by them, then the mothballs will go away.
Absolutely. I think, the frankincense and myrrh makes absolute sense in terms of when you're talking about churches and temples and places like that. But this is not that sort of typical spicy scent that you might get. So if you're thinking...
It's incensey. It's a bit more,
Yeah, it's not like an encens suave type of, or any of the Sorcinelli. You mentioned Sorcinelli, he's heavily churchy, sort of based. It's not that type of fragrance, because I guess maybe it's the linden blossom or some of the other notes that you've mentioned there that round this fragrance out a little bit more and make it a little bit, not lighter, but softer.
Yeah, softer. Almost like a little soapy.
Yes.
In a way.
Absolutely. And the story that you've painted there with the young woman who has to rebel and walk away from her life, and the whole scene with the church, and the church then being something that's inside, it paints a really nice story that goes along with this fragrance and makes it make sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
I would be intrigued to see what this does on skin.
Yeah.
It's one of those fragrances that I think probably tough to do it justice on the blotter. You probably need to see how this interacts with your skin chemistry. So again, maybe you can whack this one on as a drive home smell, and can see how that evolves on your skin.
Yeah, not to backtrack. I'm just kind of curious if you're getting this, if you still have your gaucho.
I do.
Go back to gaucho.
Mm.
Yeah. Leather's coming out.
Tobacco.
Yeah, and the tobacco.
Tobacco.
On your skin, this kind of works that way. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. That has completely changed, hasn't it? So
Lovely.
it's really starting to punch through that tobacco leather. That's the cowboy in his leathers smoking sort of scent that you're getting there.
Yeah.
A lot drier
Yes.
now as well.
Yes, sense that dryness.
Yeah, really.
Almost
That evolved
dustiness,
quite
yeah.
magically, didn't it? I'm glad I kept that in order so I could grab
that's good.
the right one. Fantastic.
they're really
Yeah, that's
good.
a beautiful scent.
I so like it when, we were talking about Laura, but
Yeah.
At all the perfume places. They're like, wear it, go out, come back in half an hour at least, and then decide, because it's, we often forget that it's the dry down that really holds the perfume.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't just have the opening and make a decision. You need to go through the dry down. It's
totally.
definitely walk the block, give it 15, 20 minutes, and then you'll get the real, get to the
sense of
heart.
it.
Yeah, you'll get to the heart of the fragrance.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Robin, have you just sprayed out our last fragrance?
I have. It's smokestack.
Smokestack. All right, let's have a smell of smokestack. All right, so in having a smell, this one's fairly obvious to me why this one's called smokestack, but take us through why have you called this one smokestack?
So I'm a big fan of the blues. I listen to it. I like all kinds of music, but I certainly... And I was like, I want to make a really smoky perfume, and I want to be really... I want to turn sandalwood dark. I want to turn, make sandalwood a dark thing. It's generally a sacred thing. It's a beautiful smell. So let's make a dark sandalwood. So there was so many mental briefs on this one. It was almost a bit challenging. It was a challenging perfume to wear. I wear this, suits me. Lots of people doesn't suit them, right?
Okay.
The opening notes on this one are, of course, you can get the smoke. You'll get the smoke throughout.
Absolutely.
But the opening notes on this one are like they should be aniseed. I'm just trying to remember every single one it should be aniseed which is almost like you can't get it out because you need to wait for some of the smoky stuff to clear.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea, I was listening to, so coming back to the blues, sorry, I went off on a tangent there because this is one of my favorites of mine. There's a song called Smokestack Lightning by Howling Wolf. I don't know if you've heard it. If you have.
I have heard of Howling Wolf. I don't know their work all that well.
Yeah. So I was originally, I love that song. It's one of my favorites. I don't know why. It's just one of my favorites. And I was like, let's make a perfume for Wolf. I was like, you're not going to call it for Wolf. Just make a perfume. It's fine. Yeah. And I was listening to their albums when the first formulation of this started. And I started to kind of go, wait, I'm blending some timelines here slightly. But now I'm getting pictures of like voodoo. I'm getting a very strong kind of, sense of the Deep South. And I'm like, that's because of the music. That's because of the music. And, I was like carrying on. I was like, just carry on. There's an ingredient in here like birch tar, cade, things that add a lot of smoky kind of depth. But I was then getting like a moonshine distill in the middle of the night. And I'm like, this isn't helpful. The whole perfume is alcohol. 70%, whatever it is alcohol.
Yeah.
How am I going to do moonshine? Like, that's not even possible. And I was like, all right, let's chase it. So there was juniper.
That's what I smelled right at the beginning.
Yeah. So there's juniper. Now this one changes. Like we thought, you can appreciate the gaucho evolution. This one evolves quite a lot. But so it opens with a little aniseed, smoke, juniper, mahogany woods settling into that deep wood. And then the end of this, and this is why I like it the next morning on my pillow when I'm waking up, because this thing, this is one of the ones that, they all mostly will last you like 8 to 12, maybe longer. But this one has this, if you wait for it long enough, you'll get what I mean by a dark sandalwood. It's like a brooding kind of heavy sandalwood finish. Not one that's kind of stifling. It's quite smooth, but it's definitely not your traditional sandalwood finish, on a perfume. And it'll carry it through. So the idea was, while this is going on, right, here's another one. While all of this is going on, I'm like, but wait, you wanted to work with choya loban, which is frankincense, in the same way that the nak is done, right? So they take Boswellia serrata, frankincense, and they put it through dry distillation, and they turn it into this black sticky tar. Again, not one you want to, not one you want to use. So this has a lot of smoke kind of notes. But when you bring, and it's dangerous to kind of throw it all into one, because it could just be one big mishmash of smoke and smoky things. But depending on the ingredients you use and how you've layered them, it'll carry that smoke right through, and the smoke will keep changing, which is those different ingredients coming to the fore, right? So, there's birch tar, there's a little bit of cade oil, rectified, of course. There's this choya loban, which is this dry distillation frankincense. And there's one more, which is kind of escaping me right now. My mind's drawing a blank. But they're all, you can smell them at different times, if you know your smokes, I guess, right? You can smell them at different times, and they keep evolving. And then the woods are more like a heavy, dark mahogany. So I guess the only ode to the moonshine, because I think it's impossible, I don't know how you're going to do it, is the juniper bit up front. And the idea around this being in a voodoo context was, this guy walking past. Do you know who Marie Laveau is? She used to be a voodoo priestess in New Orleans. So this guy walking past a voodoo priestess's house like Marie Laveau. There's frankincense burning. There's juniper berries around, or bushes around her house, and he's like, "Do not disturb her when she's, when she's working." And he goes. And the images I was getting is he goes into an alleyway, and he hears a crack of a noise or something. He turns around, and there are these two big smokestacks, behind the moon, in front of a rising yellow moon. And it was a time when moonshine was a thing, because prohibition, whatever. And when I've thought about it later, I'm like, you really blended some genres there. Those things didn't all happen at the same time. But it was just this thing. Couldn't help it. There was these images. And he's heading to like a speakeasy, but a true speakeasy, one that shouldn't have been around, illegal. And he can hear the music coming through the doors. And he's like, okay, tonight's going to be magic. But it's got that setting. And initially it's danger and it's confronting. But then it settles into, when it finishes, it settles into something that personally I consider very sexy, right? Like a really, I think somebody described it like, something that you'd wear if you wanted to get into trouble. On the dry down. So it's like danger, exhilaration, fear, a few of those things working through. And I was like, I'm not calling this For Wolf, and Smokestack Lightning came on. I went, well, perfect. I'm calling it Smokestack. So I called it Smokestack.
Okay, so it's a bit of an ode to the deep south. The imagery I was getting as you were talking through this is Robin and I used to be obsessed with the show many years ago called True Blood, that's set in the deep south. It's a great show if you ever get a chance to watch it, but it sort of explores all of those sort of themes of things like voodoo and witchery and all of that sort of stuff in the deep south, but it's set in the modern day. So one of the main places in which they meet is in a speakeasy. So I was getting sort of all that imagery as you were going through, and certainly
no vampires in this one. But
no vampires.
No, but
no vampires. But certainly you hit with the smoke initially. To my nose, I'm getting a bit of that anise there. I'm not sure if there's any sort of white flower in here at all.
There is. There's actually a really important flower. It's narcissus.
Narcissus. Okay, so there was something there in the sort of the background for me. Just it's not super prominent, but they're sort of balancing it out. Yeah. And then
Interesting.
I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to be getting it yet or not, the mahogany,
Mm.
that wood, almost like a, freshly polished furniture type of smell with the mahogany sort of in there for me as well.
Mm.
I think the way you've described it, this feels like a sophisticated date night rebellious sort of scent. Quite a, again, I feel like I would love to wear this. It feels sort of manly to me.
Very different on skin. What I'm getting here, and I've smelled this on a lot of skin, it's very different.
Yeah.
So worth a go, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can just
Yeah.
imagine.
You'll have to try it on.
I
Robin.
will, yeah. But I got what you said about the first sniff is it's quite confronting, and it's very smoky as well as that sort of juniper pow. But now it's already
It'll mellow into something really
mellow.
nice. This is the thing about sometimes, and with top notes, they are top, they are volatile, they do escape, but there's elements of it that can help further down all the way in the dry down.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most amazing opening or like the most attractive opening, but that's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And this perfume's 8.5, 12 hours at least. Certainly this one.
Absolutely. The opening of this is lovely, by the way. So, and I actually really love the smokiness of the opening here, but I think you hit the nail on the head there. There are some fragrances, and we've got them in our own collection. We go, oof, the opening's a bit much, but just give it a couple of minutes, and when it settles down, it's like absolutely gorgeous. I think
I find that a little bit with naturals, that I don't always love the very, very first few seconds, and then as it sort of starts to settle down, I start to appreciate it more.
Yeah, it happens every time I put that Opus tobacco on from Umwaj. You go, oh, it smells a bit like curry. I'm like, just give it 5 minutes. It'll dissipate, and then you'll get the actual what that really smells like, and then it's beautiful, and you love it on me. So
True.
Beautiful set of fragrances. It is, I do say this on most of the shows here, but it's nigh on impossible to really describe what's going on in these fragrances here. We're doing our best to describe the notes and describe what's going on here, but this is the set of fragrances you really need to put onto your skin, and you really do need to smell. And so I'd highly recommend, if you're in Melbourne, get down to Law and give it a try. Put it on your skin. You can't really do it justice by just spraying it onto a blotter. But really unique, fantastic stories. I love the merging of the Indian culture and your background with the Australian culture without it being Indian or Australian. It's just its own thing. It's its own story. Absolutely love it. It's all tied to memory, all tied to story, and your unique creative output. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Love to, yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. So I think we've probably had enough time now to sort of return to the Seas of Inciver and get into our base notes. Just before we do have a smell, let's go back to our perfume pyramid just one last time. So on the screen, we've got our perfume pyramid up again, and now we're at the very bottom of that pyramid. And one thing that you'll notice, because of the pyramid shape, is it actually makes up the largest component of the pyramid. And that's because the base notes are actually almost the opposite of those opening notes, where the opening notes are quite light and volatile. They dissipate quite quickly, or at least they move into the background quite quickly. Our base notes are actually dense. They're heavy. They stick to our skin, and they actually provide longevity. And when we talk about longevity, again, that can vary anywhere from a couple of hours out to, with these fragrances, it's 8 to 12 hours and sometimes even longer, just depending on the formulation and what's actually there in the base. This show is proudly sponsored by Watchvault, Australia's premier destination for luxury and vintage timepieces. Every watch is trusted, verified, and ready for its next chapter. Visit watchvault.com.au to discover your next timeless investment. So, with base notes explained, let's have another smell and take us through what we're actually smelling in the base.
Yeah, so I don't. We've got lots of.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has evolved quite a lot here. Mm.
So we've left most of the ginger behind. I'd say there should still be a little bit, and we are mostly in like an ambergris kind of, you know, like an ambergris oriented kind of base. So this is, this one is again sweet ambergris, right? So you want so this is what I mean by a sweet ocean.
Yeah.
Right. The sweet Seas of Inciver. The idea is that you're definitely, as a base, if someone just came in and smelled the base, they're like, oh, that's a bit oceanic, you know? It's like, okay, so you're wearing an oceanic perfume, or an aquatic rather. But I wanted to hold on to the sweet bits as it kind of, you know, so at no point are we ever getting into, well, you started with oysters and now I just smell like shellfish.
Yeah.
Or you started with, you know, so I think the most important ingredient, which is an aroma chemical, of course, we're not using real ambergris, right? But it's a couple of blends of one called ambergris olfactive, and there's a couple of other things that go in with it to kind of enhance that sweetness. I think the only other thing that's probably worth mentioning here is, if you remember, we talked about the watermelon at the beginning, and I said that there was a few other things that kind of sat with it to sweeten it, you know, to carry the sweet through. The one at the base of this, I think the one at the base of this is, I can still get the licorice, but the one at the base of this is, I don't know if I remember, I don't know if I told you about ingredient called fructone. It's kind of like a fruit-based, you know, for lack of a better word, it's a synthetic. That's what sits with the ambergris in this kind of pool, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's almost like it creates an emotion, or it's an atmosphere that it's creating on the skin, this fragrance. And you do exactly as you say, the sweetness is it's more. There's more now blooming on the skin, I feel. But it sort of feels like it's in the air.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, and sorry. And what we wanted to kind of orient, you know, we keep saying the sweet Seas of Inciver, the sweet Seas of ginger, whatever. But it's definitely in like a salt rock pooly kind of finish. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's oceanic. So it's got that theme has carried through from the opening all the way through to the base here. So it's oceanic, whereas a lot of those oceanic type fragrances are they're very mineral without sweetness. This has got the sweetness that has also bridged its way all the way through to the base here. So you've actually got some of that sweetness sitting in the base. Yeah. To me, it's also got a little bit of a woodiness in the base there as well.
There would be a little, I guess there definitely is some woods, but I would say they're very neutrally. They're kind of like we need to balance. Yeah. You often need to balance a layer or a kind of, you know, the dry down. So if anything, I would think it would be something like clear wood that I might have used here. I can't recall exactly what to balance that out, but there certainly is. I mean, in a lot of the perfumes, we'd use wood to kind of balance out.
Absolutely. It also provides a bit of longevity as well. Yeah. So you typically find things like sandalwood and other types of wood sitting in the base, along with ambergris, and this is what gives you that. When you say 8 to 12 hours, it's sticking there because you've got those type of notes that sit in the bottom. Yeah. But as you said, some sit at the forefront, some sit in the back, and so what's sitting in the forefront there is that ambergris, oceanic, but also the fructosy type smell.
And in the mineral sense, the sense of the mineral is there.
Yeah.
Oh, it just hit me. Sorry. Yeah, I should have remembered this. Yeah, labdanum, absolute. Enough to hold it, because I was
Yeah.
trying to think, when you were saying woods, I was like, woods, what did I do with this in woods? And I remember a little bit, but there is actually some labdanum that we might have even picked up a little in the heart, which I might not have mentioned, but it's definitely in the perfume to kind of, it's a yeah, do you know what labdanum is? That sticky,
Yes.
yeah, resin-like thing. So I have used labdanum in here as a fixative for some of it, but it's also to kind of bring out when labdanum is not necessarily the sweetest thing, but it has some kind of sweet profile to it, and it's there. I can feel it, at least on my skin. I can get it in the base.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not the dominant scent. So neither is
No.
that sort of woody scent. It's just something that's sort of on the periphery for me.
Yeah.
But it's just there sort of cradling that oceanic bits and that sweetness. It's really unique. I mean, this is,
Yes.
we always do our best to try and describe the fragrance, but because this is quite different. Like it's quite a different fragrance. I've never smelled anything like this before. It's very, very unique. The only way you're going to really be able to experience this is you need to experience it. You need to wear it on the skin. Even the blotter to my skin now, I would think they're
You would
almost
not even know they were
two
the
different
same
fragrances.
Yeah.
Because this is still, I mean, this is still almost in the opening, maybe a little bit starting to move into the heart here.
Yeah. I just thought to
Doesn't
make sure
have
I had the right blotter. It's so different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because it doesn't have my skin, the heat. Nothing's pushing this scent forward. It's just sitting on a cold blotter. So absolutely wonderful, creative expression of a fragrance, something that's quite different. I don't think you could pigeonhole this into a particular season either. This feels like it would suit summer, winter, spring, autumn, doesn't really matter.
In my mind, I've gone, oh, it's summer. Let's,
Yeah.
And I'm like, it smells. Funnily enough, that one smells the same for me, at least. That's one smells the same no matter when. Gaucho will be a bit different.
Yeah.
Certainly, smokestack different. But some of these will just you don't see them really even changing with the season that much.
Well, we're in probably the depths of winter now, aren't we? In Melbourne, the room that we're in, we haven't turned the heater on. It's I'd say it's maybe about 18 degrees in here, so it's not particularly warm, not particularly cold. It works. It works in this, and I'm sure that this would be fantastic in summer as well. Really versatile fragrance while being very, very unique. It has been absolutely wonderful to explore this one with you, I've got to say. We were intrigued. As we mentioned to you when we met with you a few weeks ago, we tried these fragrances a number of months ago in Law, and they were all memorable, but difficult to hold on to the scent memory until you come back to them. So I feel like I've discovered most of these again for the very first time, and certainly seeing the fragrance through your eyes and seeing it through the stories that you've told makes the whole experience a little bit different for us as well. So thank you so much for taking us through that masterclass. It's been absolutely fantastic. Now we've got we've got 5 fragrances in front of us here, and in the very opening of the show, you sort of mentioned that there's one sort of in the pipeline at the moment. You've thought about it. You've started to. I think you said you've got it, sort of like ready to.
It's ready to go, as in to get scaled up and compounded. Yeah,
fantastic. So, not to hold you to anything, but is that something that we might see this year?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd say in about 3 months if I got my skates on, which is sometimes very hard. Yeah, it's quite different to any of these. It's I'll put this out there. I won't give you the name if that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's an ode to limerence. So
to limerence.
Yeah, to the longing of something, and the obsessive longing of something. So it's an interesting one. It again random
Yes.
backstory.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, won't
Yeah,
we? Mm.
but it's it's got my partner asked me, she was like, when are you going to make one for me? I was like, I don't know if I can, because she's my best critic. She's she will tell me straight away, I don't like that, but she's like, make one for me. So I was like, all right, I'll try. And she loves it. It's great. But now she's like, don't put this out there. This is mine. I'm like, no, I'm not putting this hard work in if I'm not going to put it out there. So so it'll be out hopefully in the next 3 to 4 months. But yeah, we'll be getting it out.
All right, we won't hold you to the date range, but just good to know that that the brand is going to continue to expand over time. So you've already got one ready to go, and I'm sure that won't be the last fragrance that you produce. You'll be adding to the range, sort of as you go along, and inspiration hits.
Yeah.
So what I would assume with this new fragrance that's coming is that while it's going to be very different to all of the rest of them, there'll be some common themes like possibly multiple stories that tie it together, that there is a slight off note in there as well, and there's some sort of ode to your Indian background, and those are the sort of typical sort of themes that run through all of the fragrances.
Yeah, it's almost like if you had to draw common threads, you'd be like, these are the things that happen most of the time on all of these perfumes. So I guess it's got that. I haven't even reflected on that with the sixth one, but I'm sure it's got something there. I'll say this much. It's a green cherry kind of orientation.
Wow, sounds very intriguing.
Yeah. So
it really does. Robin's a bit of a cherry of fanatic at the moment, so she'll be very keen to get her nose on that one as well.
I like to experience it in its different facets, I guess. So I'm always looking.
If you're looking for classic cherry, it'll disappoint you.
Oh.
But otherwise, if you're curious, it'll be quite interesting.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely be looking at it with a curious mind. And just in terms of that, like for somebody who is curious about your brand, how do you suppose they might start? Because it's very niche, right? It's definitely not for a beginner, I would say. These fragrances are for everyone, of course, but
look, my biggest problem right now is I don't sell samples, right? If you stock with me, I'll actually ask you to give as many away for free, with your other purchases, or if you're I guess I have now been convinced that it makes sense to do a sample pack, so that will also be coming out in 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
With the sixth one, so you get all 6.
Yeah.
But I can't really look. There's a philosophy in Vararoha where we haven't really touched on, and it's not that important. But I often say this is for these perfumes are for the quiet rebel. And the reason around that kind of connotation of what is a quiet rebel is someone who knows their own mind, who isn't looking necessarily to herd or to follow or to go with their own, it's someone who's looking to go with their own kind of sense of style, their own kind of sense of, this is I like it. Doesn't matter if you don't, or it doesn't matter if they don't. It's really about the people that love being individualistic. Or individualists. Again, it's 5 perfumes, and you might not like any of them, and that's perfectly cool. But if you like one, you like it because you like it. It's not, there isn't a pressure to like it, or it's not the cool thing, or it's not. So I guess the quiet rebel is not wanting to have to stand out for the sake of standing out, but standing true, to who you are. I think if you had to start with something, the best thing to do is to try and get in and smell them and figure out what, because I've met a few people who absolutely want all 3 and wear them all 3. But generally you'll find like someone going, that's the one I like. I don't like any of your others.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's cool. That's no problem. That's
whatever you like.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people will be like, no, I love this one and that one. So generally I get 3, I'm yet to find I love 4. I'm certainly not, I don't think I'll ever find I love all 5. But that's the idea is to just definitely, if you can get your hands on, they're stocked in a couple of places now where we are looking to, we're not pushing very heavy. We kind of slow market everything. We're not trying to, blow up or anything like that. But if you can get to a stockist and smell some, Lore's a good one. Certainly we're up in Kyneton as well. If you can get to a stockist and smell one and take your journey that way, you probably do yourself a much better service than me telling you which one you should start with, If,
Yeah, that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
So
Yep.
if someone wanted to sort of follow the journey, they wanted to stay in touch with when the next fragrance is coming out and when the sample pack's coming out, how best could they do that?
I'd love to just surprise them. No, I'm kidding. we're on Instagram. Certainly the website vararohaperfumery.com, and the Instagram handle is Vararoha Perfumery. We're just kind of small that way. We're just limited to that. But we'll be announcing when we're releasing, probably very cryptically, if I trust myself, and then it'll just be there. It'll just be, oh, there's a 6th one. But yeah, those are our 2 main ways that we engage, I guess, with our clients.
Fantastic. All right. So for those people who may have missed it, so if you're watching, we'll put the Vararoha website on the screen now. So that'll be rolling across your screen right now. For those of you who are listening on Spotify or maybe listening on Apple Podcasts, we'll embed the website straight into the description to make it nice and easy for you to click and then find the main website and then obviously connect in with all of the socials. Now, what we'll also have on the screen for you now is a QR code. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to our website, which is olfactive.com.au, where we'll have a full profile on PK and on Vararoha, and along with a direct link to the website as well. So there's multiple ways in which you can discover this really wonderful and interesting brand. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. It was really, really fun. It was good fun.
Oh, thank you, PK. I must admit, I have absolutely loved going through this. Thank you so much for such an amazing masterclass. It's a fascinating fragrance, and actually all of them, I've really enjoyed the stories and the scents. They are really beautiful. So we hope our listeners have also enjoyed the episode just as much. If you have, please like and subscribe. We'll be back in a couple of weeks again with a mid-season episode. So this is where we do a recap. It's a great place to start if you're new to the channel. It'll allow you to kind of get a summary of some of the highlights of some of the shows that we've done in season 2 so far. Until then, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.